Stevens. Thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest today is George Neumayr. He is senior editor at the American Spectator. Spectator.org is where you can find all of his great articles. He's also the author of several books, including The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, No Higher Power. Lots of great stuff from George Neumayr, and we are blessed to have him with us today. George, thank you for being back with us. How are you today?
Oh, I'm good. Good. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a blessing to be with you, and we've got plenty to run down today. We're going to get into the upcoming governor's race in Virginia, and George is going to help us with that. He's right there on the ground in Virginia, and we're going to get into what's going on with the pro-abortion Democrat candidate, fake Catholic Terry McAuliffe, and I'll explain why we ought to use that term when we're describing him and other pro-abortion Catholic, so-called Catholic politicians. We ought to call them fake Catholics. We'll get into that. There's also a clear divide on parental rights in that Virginia governor's race, which we'll get into. And at a time when we have a memorandum that went out earlier this month from U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland to the FBI in an apparent attempt to intimidate parents from showing up and speaking up at local school board meetings to express their displeasure with mask mandates on their little kids and CRT being taught in their schools. It's all about as crazy as some of Biden's recent appointments to the federal bureaucracy, which we'll have George weigh in on, and much more. But first, it's important that we always begin this Wednesday current events show by remembering that the number one news story that ought to be reported by all the networks is going unreported today and every day. And that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-funded, government-protected mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers, real people, being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of the loss of human life, we have at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Imagine 3,000 of any other category of persons being murdered in a given day in our nation, and it going unreported by the media and even mostly ignored by the churches. Imagine if that was happening every day, and you begin to understand something of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. According to a July 2020 article in the prestigious peer-reviewed medical journal The Lancet, we have a global death toll from abortion of more than 200,000 preborn children being murdered worldwide every day. That's 200,000 every day. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. We must live, proclaim, and push forward the vision that every innocent human being, without exception, has a right to life. Even an atheist still ought to have the basic moral sense to see the evil of killing an innocent child. For those who do believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear, authoritative, magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us absolutely no place to hide in treating those in the womb as any less valuable than us. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, quote, "Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life," end of quote. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people and resources available to help you in your healing process. We love you. You are not alone. Go to lovewillendchildkilling.com, click on the healing tab for more information. And so all that to really get into what is our lead topic, which very much relates to this. So keep all of that in mind. And I'm going to play a clip for you. This is the Democrat, the pro-abortion Democrat candidate for the governor of for the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. This is him this morning on MSNBC. I want you to listen to this clip and think about what his priority is. Remember, he is all in on taxpayer-funded abortion on demand, and listen to where his moral compass is pointing as the most important of issues. Here it is, Terry McAuliffe this morning.
Really? You're a parent with a 6 or 7 year old going to first grade? They can't get vaccinated yet? And you're going to send them with a teacher that's not vaccinated, that's not wearing a mask? Are you kidding me? To me, this, Mika, is disqualifying to be governor of a great state. It just is disqualifying. I want to keep our citizens safe. I want our economy to be roaring. But we've got to beat this COVID crisis that we have. We've got to get rid of this pandemic.
Okay, so he says if you're against mask mandates for 6 and 7 year olds, if you're against mandated teacher vaccinations, then you're disqualified from serving as governor. But if you're for taxpayer-funded abortion, he thinks you're very much qualified. It's actually the other way around, that actually you are disqualified if you are for taxpayer-funded abortion on demand. If you're for murdering innocent human beings, then you are disqualified. However, that's not how Terry McAuliffe sees it, and he's trying to take the moral high ground here while he is in a completely immoral position. George, what are your thoughts on all of it?
Yeah, I would agree with you. You know, he doesn't have a leg to stand on here because he's not only in favor of Roe v. Wade, you know, and all the abortions that Roe v. Wade covers, he also supports late-term abortions. And his predecessor, or the current governor, Ralph Northam, you know, famously endorsed infanticide. You know, he said that under certain circumstances, it might be justified to kill an infant. And I don't remember McAuliffe ever rejecting Northam's position on that. So he's thoroughly pro-abortion. And you're right, as you say, you know, why should we trust pro-abortion Democrats with our health care? And you know, their philosophy of healthcare includes the killing of unborn children, and so that disqualifies them to make healthcare decisions for the population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you've got a great article that is fairly fresh out. This is from October 13th, so just a week ago. And it's entitled, "Will McAuliffe's Wokeness Catch Up With Him? It has gone from a point of pride to a political problem." And in it, you point out that he also is bragging about being proud to be the first Southern governor to officiate a same-sex wedding. You go on to unpack a lot in there. Any other points you want to help us to understand about Terry McAuliffe and his wokeness while he's now trying to move back towards the middle in the final weeks of the campaign and paint himself as somehow a moderate?
Right. Yeah. He, you know, he's one of those anti-Catholic Catholics. You know, he supports gay marriage. He supports transgenderism. He supports the contraceptive mandate. And so, you know, he has really made you know, he's followed the same path that Joe Biden has followed, and he's a Democrat first and a Catholic second, if at all. And but then, as you're saying, you know, he's always presented himself as a champion of progressivism in the South, you know, and he's prided himself on being more enlightened than the average Southerner. So it is kind of funny that he's now pretending like he's a moderate, you know, when his entire career, or much of his career, has been staked on being out of step with Southerners and being out ahead of them in his view, and being more progressive than they are. So I'm hoping that will catch up with him, and people will see, especially, you know, given his comments about parents and how they should be excluded from the education of their own children. I hope that, you know, his progressivism will will prove a liability this year.
Yeah, there's a lot about this race that you can say is local to Virginia, but there's also a lot about this race that is very important to the country at large, and is sort of something that you can scale out across the country to get a sense of where we are right now. What are people understanding about where these two political parties are, where these two politicians who are racing for governor of Virginia, where are they, and making their decision on this. And again, one of those big points is the parental rights debate. And let me just play real quick. I think we have time right before the break. This is Terry McAuliffe on parental rights in a debate with Glenn Youngkin a couple of weeks ago. This is it in its context. Think about what they're talking about here as McAuliffe gives his famous line now, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." Here it is.
What we've seen over the course of the last 20 months is our school systems refusing to engage with parents. In fact, in Fairfax County this past week, we watched parents so upset because there was such sexually explicit material in the library they had never seen. It was shocking. And in fact, you vetoed the bill that would have informed parents that they were there. You believe school systems should tell children what to do. I believe parents should be in charge of their kids' education. Mr. McAuliffe, 30 seconds.
So first of all, this shows how clueless Glenn Youngkin is. He doesn't understand what the laws were because he's never been involved here in helping Virginia. But it was not. The parents had to write to veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it, also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
All right, so there it is. And again, in the context of talking about taking out sexually explicit material out of the library, sexually depraved material out of the library, McAuliffe saying, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. We'll be right back with George Neumayr. Stay tuned.
Are you ready to take on the world of flesh and the devil with just the facts? This is Jesse Romero, host of Jesus 911, heard weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm joined each day by a variety of co-hosts like Ruben Nava, Paul Clay, Dan Schneider, and my amazing wife, Anita Romero. We tackle Catholic devotions, spiritual warfare, family life, saving America, and everything in between. Join us each weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for Jesus 911. God bless you. Keep the faith.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. If we read the letters of St. Paul in the order in which they were written, we see Paul more aware of his sins as life goes on. We in the pro-life movement are not self-righteous people who think we're better than others. Rather, we begin with repentance, realizing that we recognize the sins in the world only after we've recognized our own. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic Radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today on this Current Events Wednesday, George Neumayr. He is senior editor at the American Spectator. You can find all of his great articles there, spectator.org. And, before we get into the parental rights, I do just want to make a comment because I said I would off the top, and that was talking about why we can describe pro-abortion candidates like Terry McAuliffe, who claim to be Catholic, why we can call them fake Catholics, or I actually really like George's adjective there, calling him an anti-Catholic Catholic. We have to have some way of being able to make it clear in how we're referring to these candidates who are, what are they trying to do? They're trying to use their religious affiliation, trying to take the label of Catholic in order to pander to a certain crowd, in order to garner certain votes. But the fact is that what they believe is very much opposed to the central tenets of the faith, in this case of Catholicism. So for us to just say, Catholic Terry McAuliffe or something like that, in a sense, it is scandalous, because there are other people that are out there that might get a sense, oh, look at this guy, he's a Catholic, and look at what he's doing, and they might think that's representative of the faith when it is 100% not representative of the faith. So there's got to be some way that we can make it clear, whether you call him a fake Catholic, whether you call him an anti-Catholic Catholic, some sort of descriptor, I would say, is important. And George, anything you want to comment on in terms of that? Because some people might hear us saying that and think, oh, well, that sounds kind of mean or something. But no, there's good reason that we have to have some way of describing him as such.
Right. Yeah. And I would note that, he rejects, not only theological teachings, he also rejects teachings that are accessible to human reason. You don't have to be a Catholic to oppose abortion. You just have to have reason to oppose abortion. So I find it interesting that they, Terry McAuliffe and Joe Biden, they'll often say, well, I can't impose my faith on non-Catholics or on American citizens, but nobody's asking them actually to impose faith on non-Catholics. What we're asking is that they apply rational positions or observe rational positions in our politics, such as opposition to abortion, opposition to gay marriage. I mean, you don't have to be a Catholic to oppose gay marriage, and you don't have to be a Catholic to oppose the contraceptive mandate. So they actually reject parts of Catholic teaching which are accessible to reason and which can be demonstrated by philosophy alone. And so in that way, they're even more dangerous because they've not only lost their faith, they've also lost their reason.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Across all religions, there can be a strong amount of common ground when it comes to just natural reason, natural law, and especially on something like abortion. Yeah, it doesn't take actually the less intelligence maybe you have, or the less indoctrination, I guess you could say, that you have, in the sense of having your intelligence perverted by the higher education system. You might be better off. A little kid can understand that abortion is horribly wrong, but someone maybe with a PhD in our current system might not get it. And certainly a lot of these politicians, when there's a party that is all in for taxpayer-funded abortion on demand, it has gotten so extreme. No longer are they saying safe, legal, and rare. The rare is gone. You have a recent article that gets into that quite well. But anything you want to further say about that race going on in Virginia, that gubernatorial race in Virginia? You're on the ground there. Anything else that we need to know about where that's at that might be interesting, not only to Virginia local politics, state politics there, but across the board for the nation?
Well, I think the race has really exposed where the Democrats truly stand on parental rights. Nobody has made an anti-parent comment as starkly as McAuliffe. When he said parents should not be dictating the curriculum of their children. That's the most outspokenly anti-parent comment probably ever made by a Democrat. Democrats normally try to conceal their contempt for parental rights, but McAuliffe has provided the service showing where the Democrats truly stand on that issue. They think that the state, not the parents, should be the primary educator of their children. And that's, as we were saying, McAuliffe is opposed to the natural moral law on abortion and gay marriage and transgenderism. He's also opposed to the natural moral law on this issue because the natural moral law stipulates that parents are the primary educators of their children. And so McAuliffe has made it clear that the Democrats don't believe that. And so they really are the party against parental rights, against parental authority. And the reason for that is that the family poses a threat, or it's a rival authority to liberalism's conception of the state. The liberals think that the state should get bigger and bigger and bigger, and its authority should eclipse the authority of religion and the traditional family. And so they see the traditional family and religion as impediments and obstacles to the triumph of their conception of the state. And so that's why McAuliffe made the comment he did. And I think Americans across the country should take note of that comment and recognize that is where the party it has gone and it's probably going to go even farther than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've written another great article that unpacks a lot of that. It's a October 6th article which you entitled "The Collectivist Presumption Against Parents is on Open Display in the Democrat Party." And you lay this out. I like this a good deal. This is some great writing from George Neumayr here. He says this, quote, "The Democrat Party's twisted understanding of the state is seen in its treatment of parents as enemies of it. Like the collapsing Roman Empire, the Democrats cast the best citizens as the worst ones and the worst citizens as the best ones. They go after moms and dads, the little sisters of the poor, and patriotic soldiers, among others, all while lionizing anti-American activists and criminals." And that's very, very well said, and very much on display when we think about that memo that came out from Attorney General Garland earlier this month, where he put out this memo directing the FBI to start getting involved with what's going on in local school boards, and really as a way to, as I think is used in legal terms, to chill the free speech of those parents. He wants to intimidate those parents, it seems quite clear from showing up and speaking out at these school boards, which has been so effective across the country, whether it's mask mandates, teaching critical race theory, whatever it is. Parents have a legitimate gripe to be upset about some of the things that they're learning, sexually explicit materials in the schools, in the libraries, curriculums. Parents need to be more involved, and maybe that's one good thing that came out of some of the lockdowns, is that parents became more aware of what is going on, what their kids are being taught by some of these teachers. I want to play this clip as an example of somebody getting pretty heated about this. This is Senator Josh Hawley a couple of weeks ago at a hearing with Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. So this Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, she was before the Senate for this hearing, and Josh Hawley, he really, I think this memo had come out from Merrick Garland maybe the day before, something like that, and he had a strong line of questioning, and this kind of got him into the conclusion of it all. Hopefully it helps everyone to understand this a little bit better. Here it is.
This is truly extraordinary. I think you know it is. It's unprecedented. You can't point to a single instance where anything like this has happened before. And I think parents across this country are going to be stunned to learn, stunned, that if they show up at a local school board meeting, by the way, where they have the right to appear and be heard, where they have the right to say something about their children's education, where they have the right to vote, and you are attempting to intimidate them, you are attempting to silence them, you are attempting to interfere with their rights as parents, and yes, with their rights as voters. This is wrong, this is dangerous, and I cannot believe that an Attorney General of the United States is engaging in this kind of conduct. And frankly, I can't believe that you are sitting here today defending it. I intend to get answers to these questions. You won't answer my questions. I'm going to get answers to these questions. Mr. Chairman, we need to have a hearing on this subject. We need to hear from the Attorney General himself. He needs to come here, take the oath, sit there, and answer questions. We have never seen anything like this before in our country's history. And frankly, I want to say, I think it is a dangerous, dangerous precedent.
All right, that's Senator Josh Hawley just a couple of weeks ago at a hearing with Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. George Neumayr, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I think that's right. I mean, we're seeing, I think, the true nature of liberalism. It's been revealed, that the liberalism is has a conception of the state that is tyrannical, that is disconnected from God-given rights. One of which is the right of parents to be the primary educators of their children. And so it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that the Biden administration, which espouses that tyrannical conception of the state, would seek to exclude parents from school board meetings and would try to intimidate them into staying out of the education of their own children, because they, the Biden ideology is that the state is the great expert on education, and also the important point to make here is that really, the reason they want to control education and keep parents away from the education of their own children is so that they can produce woke citizens for the woke country that they're trying to create. In order to produce the kind of pliable and easily propagandized citizens that they need for the fundamentally transformed America that Biden talks about, they have to control education completely and take it out of the hands of parents. And that's why they're always so hostile to homeschooling. That's why they're hostile to private schools. That's why they oppose school vouchers and charter schools, because they really want the state to have 100% control over the shaping of future citizens for the country.
Mm-hmm. What is your sense on what the likely result will be there in Virginia in this race for governor?
Well, it's really it's tightened. The race has tightened greatly, and it's some people think it's a dead heat. I tend to be rather pessimistic about these things because I think Virginia has, Northern Virginia in particular is overflowing with liberals and Democrats, and so the state, unfortunately, is, I think, getting increasingly blue, and so I think it's going to be tough for Youngkin to win. But I think McAuliffe is running a poor race, and he's put his foot in his mouth so many times that he could actually lose this thing, and I'm hoping that he does.
Mm-hmm. And he's got all the highest power surrogates from the Democrat Party coming out and stumping for him at this point, so you can tell that they are nervous about it, and it sure would be a big win for the Republicans if it goes the other way. I think I heard today that there's only been one Republican governor in Virginia over the past 20 years. So yeah, that would be a big victory. But hopefully, again, parents are waking up to what is going on. Yes, not just when it comes to parental rights, but also when it comes to parental responsibility, and saying we ought to love our children, and we ought to get rid of any politicians who are trying to tell us not to love our children, in fact, trying to tell us that it's good to kill our children. But we're going to start there when we get back. You've got an article where it really shows how upside down things have become when they're trying to say that abortion is good. It makes you a better mother, they say. And you lay this out in a recent article. We'll have much more with George Neumayr in just a bit when we get back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
Prayer in time of affliction. Blessed, O Lord, be thy name forever. Who has permitted this affliction to come upon us? We cannot escape it, but must of necessity fly to thee to help us and turn it to our good. Lord, we are now in affliction. Our souls are ill at ease, for we are much troubled with this present suffering. Let it please thee, O Lord, to deliver us, for poor wretches that we are. What can we do without thee? Thy mighty hand can do all things. Give us patience, O Lord, and strength and peace. Help us, O God, and we will not fear, no matter how grievously we may be afflicted. O Lord, thy will be done. Welcome be the will of God. Sacred Heart of Jesus, we place our trust in thee. Amen.
Seven days after fertilization, the week-old embryo finds a spot in the lining of the uterus that will become home for the next 9 months. Nestled safely in his or her mother's womb, the embryo begins to implant and produces HCG, the hormone detected by most pregnancy tests. Human life is sacred. Think about it. CoalitionForLife.com.
The Station of the Cross thanks our financial supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. As a nonprofit lay organization not affiliated with your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we're able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Current Events Wednesday with our guest today, George Neumayr. He is senior editor at the American Spectator, spectator.org, to see all of his great articles. Definitely something you want to stay tuned into. One of the best reporters around, in my opinion, and we've got him today, George Neumayr. He's also written some books that you might want to take a look at: The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, How Pope Francis is Delighting the Liberal Left and Abandoning Conservatives. Also, No Higher Power, Obama's War on Religious Freedom, which he co-authored with Phyllis Schlafly in 2012. So a lot of great stuff there. And, this just fresh out this week as well, that Senate Democrats ditch Hyde Amendment for the first time in decades. That's the title of this article from The Hill. And so again, these Democrats, these pro-abortion Democrats, which really this is the demonic centerpiece of their political identity, and it's that they're pushing taxpayer-funded abortion on demand throughout all 9 months of pregnancy up until birth. And I would say, again, if you hear Governor Northam's comments and you look at what's actually the law in New York now, even after birth, right? If someone does not care for the child that after a botched abortion, they lived through an attempted abortion, and they just set them aside to die, there's no penalty in New York at this point. They stripped it out of the penal code. And Governor Northam said that'd be fine by him in what he said a couple years ago. So I would say their ideology is going even further. And in fact, this has already been written into journals for years when they talk about fourth trimester abortion, after birth abortion. And you've got philosophers out there in Ivy League schools like Peter Singer, who argues for, hey, if we can abort the child in the womb, why can't we abort the child outside of the womb afterwards for a certain period of time? So look, this slippery slope continues to go, and we are seeing that now further and further. What used to be just a pro-abortion activist slogan on the ground, which I had heard for years on the ground, taxpayer-funded abortion on demand, the way they would say it, when I would be at a pro-life vigil or rally or a prayer event, and you'd have the pro-abortion folks out there chanting their chants. They would say it this way: free abortion on demand. Can we do it? Yes, we can. They chant that over and over again. Well, they're now running things. They're now in charge of the Democrat Party, and they're going to push as far as they can push until somebody stops them. So it's up to good people to do something here. And again, in this article from The Hill just a couple days ago, it's saying that the Hyde Amendment was omitted from legislation to fund the Labor, Health, and Human Services and Education departments. The bill was unveiled by Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Patrick Leahy, Democrat from Vermont, another fake Catholic pro-abortion Democrat. So this is going on this week. They're trying to push this through, and it says the Hyde Amendment also noticeably left out of the multi-trillion-dollar budget President Biden unveiled earlier this year. They're going to do all they can to keep pushing all of this forward. George Neumayr has a great article on some of the workings behind all of this, which really helps you to break it open a bit more. It's from October 2nd, entitled "The Cult of Abortion Under Biden. Its celebration is a defining mark of his presidency." You get into the Hyde Amendment and much more, including quotes from people like Uma Thurman, who are arguing that having an abortion actually makes them a better mother. This is how upside down we are. George, help us to learn a little bit more about this.
Right. Yeah. As I write in that article, the Democrats, under Bill Clinton, they used to say they wanted abortion safe, legal, and rare, but they don't say that anymore. You can't find a single Democrat, I guess, who would say that they want abortion to be rare. Under Biden, we've actually seen abortion celebrated, and as you were saying, the celebrities like Uma Thurman, they're coming out and they're saying that killing an unborn child was made them a better mother and was good for their family. And Alexander Sanger, who was the grandson of Margaret Sanger, he back in the 1990s and maybe early 2000s, when Bill Clinton's slogan "Safe, Legal, and Rare" was still used, he said he told the Democrats, he said, stop being so defensive about abortion and defend abortion forthrightly, celebrate it openly. And he said, describe the unborn child as a liability and a threat to the family. And so he really proposed this idea that people should defend abortion as somehow good for the family, insofar as the living children will benefit somehow from the abortion. And so that idea of Sanger's, which at the time was quite controversial, has now become thoroughly mainstream within the Democratic Party. And now we're seeing under Biden, Democratic congresswomen coming out and talking about their own abortions and saying that they were very happy that they got those abortions and that those abortions enriched their lives. And so it's really, it's a kind of amazing to see this, see the Democrats go from Bill Clinton's safe, legal, and rare slogan to this culture of celebration of abortion, and this presenting it as not just not something regrettable, but something to be championed and welcomed and paid for, as you're saying, and financed by all Americans.
All right. Yeah, and these fake Catholic politicians that are pushing this ideology, Biden, Pelosi, Tim Kaine, Leahy, McAuliffe, you can name a bunch more, sadly, but all of these anti-Catholic Catholics pushing this ideology, it doesn't stop there. They're going to push it in even through the understanding of the Catholic faith. They want you to call them Catholic. They want to change the church. They think they can change the teachings of the church maybe someday. They don't really understand who the church is. They don't believe in the church by faith. There's no appearance of that. They don't understand the gates of hell will not prevail against her. They don't get all that. They think they're going to be able to maybe have an effective lobby that can change it all at some point. But you see them doing what they can do to try to confuse people and change whatever they can. You bring this up in a great point, in a great article that you point out October 9th. This is the title, "The Targeting of Military Chaplains Under Biden." He nominates a so-called LGBT activist to oversee them. So this woman is now, if she's appointed, I don't believe she's been appointed yet, but if she's appointed, she will be overseeing all of the military chaplains. Just to get we'll let George explain some, but first, just to get some sense of who this woman is, let's hear Senator Tom Cotton in a recent hearing with her. This is him, Senator Tom Cotton, with Brenda Sue Fulton not long ago. And just listen to the line of questioning, listen to how she responds. It's all there. Here it is.
Let's turn to a statement that you had in 2017 where you said the vast majority of white evangelical leaders are utterly unmoored from the gospel of Jesus Christ. The vast majority of white evangelical leaders. What percentage do you mean by the vast majority? Obviously something more than 51% of white evangelical leaders are unmoored from the gospel of Christ. Could you put a number on it?
No, Senator.
Vast means of great extent or quantity, immense. Do you think 95% of white evangelical leaders are unmoored from the gospel of Christ?
No, Senator.
80%?
No, Senator.
70%?
No, Senator.
51%. It has to be 51, right? It has to be at least 51. You said the majority.
Understood, Senator.
Let me ask you this. Why is it white evangelical leaders? There are a lot of black evangelical leaders. There are a lot of Hispanic evangelical leaders. Are black evangelical leaders unmoored from the gospel of Christ?
Senator, I'm not sure the entire context of that, but I would say that there are a wide variety of beliefs. We don't all have the same beliefs. We don't all have the same understanding of the gospel.
Of course we don't. That's why we have things like the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That's why we respect the freedom of exercise of all of our troops and all of our fellow citizens, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or any other race or ethnicity, or whatever their religion is.
All right, so that gives you a sense of who Brenda Sue Felton is. It almost seems like she thinks, why are you asking me all these questions? Just anoint me to whatever post I wish. I think it's perhaps her LGBT alphabet soup privilege showing there, where she thinks she can just get whatever she wants because she says so. But the fact is that she has a lot to answer for. I would hope that she would not be appointed to be head over all of the military chaplains. I think that would be a disaster. But that's where we're at. George, what else do we need to know about her and about this situation?
Well, in 2017, she gave an interview to the New York Times in which she just blatantly said that conservative Christian chaplains should leave the military. And, she said, you can't, if you're a chaplain in the military, you can't put God first. You have to put the prevailing political correctness in the military first. So she's on record, saying that, traditional Christian chaplains should leave the military. So for her to be placed above those chaplains, is it's like the fox guarding the hen house. And but it shows you that Joe Biden is really determined to de-Christianize America, and he's starting. He's targeting the military because the military is one of the most historically conservative institutions in the country. So it's not surprising to me that he would find an anti-Christian lesbian to oversee Christian chaplains in the military because he wants to break the military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's to be expected.
Oh, and also I should note that she was the first lesbian to be married at a chapel on a army or a military installation. She was married at West Point, and she complained at the time, actually, that she and her lesbian partner couldn't find a chaplain to preside at their wedding, and so they had to fly in a chaplain. And what's relevant or significant about that is that that lack of access argument will be used, I believe, in the future to force chaplains to preside at gay weddings against their will. And the argument will be these chaplains have to be forced to do that, otherwise, the right to gay marriage can't be fulfilled. And the right to have a gay marriage at a military chapel, that can't be fulfilled unless you force chaplains to preside at gay weddings. I think that's the argument they're going to use. And Brenda Fulton was sort of intimating that when she complained that she couldn't find a military chaplain to preside at her wedding at the West Point Chapel, and she had to fly in a chaplain to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you list more. I mean, if anybody's following these appointments from Joe Biden all across the board, from different bureaucratic posts to judges, federal judges, it's a nightmare. I mean, it's almost laughable when you start to dig into this. These senators that are in these hearings and asking them questions that they're refusing to answer and just dodge the best they can. It's unbelievable, the backgrounds of these folks. I believe one who's going to be, I think she was approved as Bureau of Land Management, and previously she was involved in a group that was spiking trees, which actually is not only dangerous, but it can actually kill people, maim people, in a way that activists, I guess, environmental activists do to try to protect trees from being cut down. So she was this dangerous environmental activist, and now she's going to be running the Bureau of Land Management. I wonder how that's going to go. But you have an article, a preview of Biden's activist judiciary. Liberalism's advance requires the diminution of religious freedom, and you get into the selection of Beth Robinson. Tell us about her and tell us where that appointment stands.
Yeah, she's a LGBT activist from Vermont. She cut her teeth as an LGBT political activist. before she was appointed to the bench in Vermont. And she also was a very adamant opponent against religious freedom. She represented a woman who was suing a Catholic company, a Catholic printing company, that didn't want to produce pro-abortion business cards. And so she represented the woman who sued that company. So, she's very typical of Biden's appointments to the court. They're not judges, they're left-wing political activists, and most of them are pro-abortion and pro-LGBT.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. I mean, elections have consequences. All of these appointments that are taking place, we know that there have been problems in elections. We're going to start there with George when we get back. What about Virginia and election integrity? How can this be ensured in the upcoming vote? We'll be right back.
In the New Testament's first letter of St. John, chapter 5, verses 14 and 15, we read, "And we have this confidence in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us in regard to whatever we ask, we know that what we have asked him for is ours." It's incredible to realize how much God loves us, what he has promised us, and what he'll give us through our trust in him. Have you prayed for the Station of the Cross today? We would be grateful if you would remember us each day in your prayers, whether it's the Most Holy Rosary of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, the Liturgy of the Hours, the Most Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, or any other prayers you pray throughout the day. Please also pray for the intentions of your fellow Catholic radio listeners. It's so important for us to remember to keep one another in prayer.
The Station of the Cross appreciates the generosity of our supporters. We are committed to keeping our donors' accounts up to date. If there have been changes made to your payment information, please call us so that we can update your account. 1-877-888-6279, extension 104. Or update your information online at thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for your generous support of Catholic Radio.
30 seconds on the gifts of the Holy Spirit, brought to you by the Station of the Cross. The gift of piety is explained in the Catechism of the Catholic Church as the gift which leads one to devotion to God. In St. Paul's letter to the Romans, he writes, "The spirit you received is not the spirit of slaves, it is the spirit of sons, and it makes us cry out, Abba, Father." The gift of piety stirs up in us the desire to love, respect, and honor our Lord.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, George Neumayr. He is senior editor at the American Spectator. He writes there. You can find his articles at spectator.org. And George, I believe your most recent article here from October 16th, Biden taps heterodox Catholic to represent U.S. at Vatican. Heterodox Catholic is also a pretty good way to describe it. If people know what that means, good Catholics know that word, heterodox. It means not the opposite of orthodox, not believing the faith. But it says here that Joe Donnelly is Biden's idea of a sound Catholic. Tell us about Joe Donnelly and the person that is now going to be the Catholic representing the U.S. at the Vatican.
Yeah, well, Donnelly is a former senator from Indiana. You know, he was a congressman for a while, and then he became a senator from Indiana, and he, I believe, lost his race in 2018, and so he has been outside of politics for a few years. But if you look at his career, it's clear that he gradually, compromised his Catholic faith, in order to stay within the mainstream of the Democratic Party. He flip-flopped on abortion, on gay marriage in 2013. He had reservations about it as a Catholic, I guess. But because the party had embraced gay marriage, he decided to change his position and endorse gay marriage. Originally, he had been reluctant to support Planned Parenthood and any funding for Planned Parenthood, but he flip-flopped on that issue too. Ever since Obamacare was enacted, he's been supporting funding for Planned Parenthood. And, the headline said, Biden Biden appoints a pro-life Democrat to Vatican ambassadorship. That's very misleading. His lifetime Planned Parenthood voting rating was 67%. So that doesn't sound very pro-life to me. He's, at the very least, he's a very inconsistent, pro-lifer. But what's interesting about his career, though, is that it kind of shows that it's impossible, to be a good Democrat and a good Catholic at the same time. You can be a good Democrat and a bad Catholic, or you can be a bad Democrat and a good Catholic, but you can't be a good Democrat and a good Catholic at the same time, because the platform of the party is so diametrically opposed to the natural moral law as taught by the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very well said. And, I do want to get to that question on election integrity. We're going to get there, but first I want to make sure to get this in as well. When we had George on the show back about 6 weeks ago, we were talking about Afghanistan and the horrible botched withdrawal that took place there, and then the horrible attack that also took place there, killing 13 American soldiers. I believe 18 were wounded. Also killed 170 Afghans, wounded 200 more. And then the Biden administration was calling this withdrawal an extraordinary success. It's totally bizarre. They just lie and make things up, and we're supposed to just go along with it, but the media is there to help them. But one of the things we were talking about was about the drone strike, where Biden said they got the bad guys. The government was saying that, but we were seeing reports that were coming out that were saying that no, it seems like civilians were killed, and we're not sure if they got the bad guys. Well, it turns out that they didn't get the bad guys, and they killed, I think, 10 civilians, and I think 7 of them were children. And I still don't believe that they've held anybody accountable for that bombing at Kabul airport. But just to refresh, this is what Biden said about it back at that time after the bombing at the airport, and very strong words. And politically at that point, he was in big trouble because things were going so horribly. But he was trying to take this strong stance, and then with a drone strike saying, look, I held him accountable. He was able to kind of, I think, win some folks back in a certain way there that took some of the political heat off him. And now that it's all the dust has settled and it was a total lie, it didn't go that way, and they seem to withhold the information that it killed civilians for 3 weeks. That all was like political cover to buy him more time. And then once they corrected the story, people picked up on it, but it was 3 weeks ago, and it just didn't have the same impact that the truth would have had it come out at the time. Anyway, just refresh back. This is Biden at the time. Here it is.
To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
Okay, I don't know if they're still looking to hunt him down and make him pay, but I haven't heard anything about that in a long time. George, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, when we talked about this, I think we actually gave them offered a somewhat charitable interpretation, because I thought at least we had killed a few bad guys in addition to the innocent children being killed. But it turns out, as you're saying, that it was an unmitigated disaster, and everybody we killed was innocent. We didn't kill any of the bad guys, and it really is a blot on the Biden administration that they would show such bad judgment and cause such needless bloodshed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they seem to politicize it in withholding the information for 3 weeks, even though others were reporting it. They surely had that information much sooner. But again, they have this callousness toward human life. And so it's not about that. It's not about getting the truth out there. It's about what is politically expedient. And that is sadly what we're seeing. Let's get to that question on the election integrity. It is an important one. People are wondering about this. And so it is important right now in Virginia as people go to the polls, and all around the country there are elections, local elections that will be taking place. But this is the big one, the race for governor in Virginia. Has anything been done to ensure election integrity out there? How are people feeling about it?
That's a good question. I think, people are very concerned about that because, COVID has been used as a pretext to weaken voting rules and guidelines. And the fear is that weakening of guidelines and rules will empower McAuliffe, and particularly in a state where most election officials, I think, lean left. So I don't know. I'm hoping that the unpopularity of McAuliffe will catch up with him, and that will override any advantages the Democrats might have in terms of having weakened voting rules. But it's clear that COVID is now that's the justification for making voting as easy as possible, and by making voting that easy, you do create huge opportunities for fraud.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So any final comments that you want to leave us
I find it interesting though that he's going after Youngkin, for supporting Trump and saying, well, how could you support Trump when Trump is questioning the 2020 results? But that hasn't stopped McAuliffe from campaigning with Stacey Abrams, who still questions her defeat in Georgia. I don't think she's ever conceded that she lost in Georgia. And so obviously McAuliffe doesn't care about election integrity if he's campaigning with her. And this is just it's just an attempt to deflect attention from his own terrible positions, which I think should be seen as out of step with Virginians.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well,
even with Virginia's slide towards the left. I mean, at best it's a purple state. If McAuliffe wins, I guess we'll have to say it's a blue state permanently. But if Youngkin can somehow pull it out, then maybe Virginia will be back in play in 2024 in the presidential race.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very good. Well, it's always good to have George Neumayr with us to help us to straighten some things out and understand things a little bit more deeply, and to make sure that we are seeing some of the most important things that oftentimes are being overlooked or just ignored. And so, George, we appreciate your good work. Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Oh, sure. Thanks for having me. God bless you.
God bless you. All right. And again, folks can find that good work over at the American Spectator, spectator.org. You can also check out the books, The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, No Higher Power, all good stuff. But again, spectator.org is where you can keep track of George's articles. But hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments on it, shoot me an email, jimh@thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.
Hardwood Mall underwrites with the Station of the Cross.